Fairbanks, Alaska. Winter of '99. We were out on patrol near Fort Wainwright, checking a slow mover the radar picked up. Rode into a valley that felt too damn quiet. The herd below was twitchy, like they knew something we didn't. Then the air changed. Heavy, wrong. Out of the clouds, this massive thing came around. Wings beating so hard you felt it in your chest. It grabbed a full-grown caribou like nothing, then stopped above us, just hanging there. Not hunting, choosing. And that's when we realized it wasn't the herd it was after. It was looking at us. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. Fairbanks chews bone. That coal gets inside the joints and rattles them like loose screws. I was young then, late 20s. Specialist pay. I thought I knew something hard. Turns out I only knew about cold. Fort Wainwright sits neat in the map like it belongs. In winter, it looks like nothing should live there but crows and the stubborn. We lived there anyway. We wore our cold weather gear like a second skin. We ran patrols on snow machines. Checked radar shacks out along the line. Did our boring Cold War thing after the Cold War ended. The mission hung on like an echo. We watched the sky for bombers that never came. We listened for ghosts in the static. Morning formation meant steam rising off breath like smoke signals. Top barking with a coffee mug in his fist. Frostbite warnings. Again. Cover your damn faces. Don't be idiots. He said it every day. Somebody always forgot. A cheek gone pale. A fingertip numb. The medic would rub it and swear and say we were born stupid, and the cold was just finishing the job. Chow hall was eggs and gravy that tasted like salt and hope. Coffee like motor oil. We ate fast and loud. We joked about Soviet planes. They never show, we'd say. They're scared of our coffee. Or, they know the radar can't see through this much stupid. I pulled duty with a squad that fit together like mismatched parts that somehow made a truck run. We had Lynch from Ohio, grin like a cracked fence. We had Ruiz, Puerto Rican, the kind of guy who laughed before he told the joke and made you laugh too. We had Epps, a big farm boy with the shoulders of a barn. We had a butter bar who rotated every few months. Some new clean-faced lieutenant with cheekbones that hadn't met wind yet. And we had Meyer. Quiet. Alaska-born. Not native, but his stepdad was. He kept his words folded away like knives. We called the snow machines, sleds, or snow-goes, depending on who you learn from. We kept jerry cans lashed and spare belts tucked in the cargo box. We traveled in a stagger, so if one broke through crust, the others didn't follow. We stopped to check filed routes at small shacks with creaking doors. We logged our position on paper and in the little electronic tracker that always seemed a minute slow. We carried radios and spare batteries wrapped in socks to keep them warm. The cold kills batteries first. Then it kills your fingers. Then it kills you. The radar stacks sat like forgotten guardians. The old DEW line story was the pitch they gave us in processing. Early warning. Watch the sky so the bad guys don't drop fire on our heads. The Cold War was supposed to be over. But the gear stayed. The mission stayed. The pay stayed low. We learned the tricks. False returns from storms when the snow came sideways and the sky hummed. Bird flocks throwing weird shadows in the scope. Aurora playing games with the signal. Sometimes the screens looked like the sky was full of silver fish. We called the op shack and they'd mumble about interference. We'd log it and yawn. Boredom is a slow knife. Most days, the sharpest thing was the wind. Night came early. The dark in Alaska is not the same as dark anywhere else. It is its own thing. It makes a sound. A dry whisper, like a saw on old wood. When the aurora danced, it felt like God had left a curtain open. We watched it on smoke breaks and pretended it didn't give us goose flesh. In the barracks, we hung wet socks near heaters and hoped they didn't melt. We scrolled old photos on busted phones. Girlfriends that always seemed to find a new guy the minute they learned how far Alaska really was. Wives who said they understood and then didn't. Letters that smelled like home. I kept one for my little sister in a Ziploc. She wrote in pink pen. It looked like candy thrown in the snow. We had our routes memorized. This ridge to that valley. This creek cut that turns to glass in the morning. We knew where the caribou liked to graze and where not to take a sled unless you liked flying. We joked about the caribou. They're our neighbors, Ruiz said once. They pay their taxes in turds. We slept light. We woke angry. We lived in cheap wool and green plastic. We were young. Nothing ever happens here, we said. Over and over like a charm. Nothing ever happens here. I believed it until the night the radio cracked and said we had a slow mover on the scope and could we go take a look. I shrugged, put on my gloves, kicked my snow go alive. It felt like another stupid errand. Wind at my back, sled tracks running east, the cold biting like a dog that knows your name. We laughed in our helmets and set out because that's what we did. Check. Log. Return. Ciao. Sleep. Repeat until your brain turned flat as a frozen pond. That was before we knew. The first hint came from a local, old guy at the gas station outside post. He wore a parka that looked older than me. He rang me up for a coffee and jerky and looked me in the eyes like he was measuring something inside my head. You boys don't camp near the big herds, he said. No hello, no smile. You keep your fire by the trees. I asked why. He shrugged. Not good. He handed me change like he didn't want to touch my hand too long. I told Ruiz about it. He laughed. He means wolves, or bears, or aliens. Old guys always say cryptic crap. Back at the radar shack, the operators had circles under their eyes. They had a sickly glow from the screens. One, a staff sergeant, I didn't know well, muttered in a way that wasn't aimed at anyone. Big shadows, he said, don't line up with any of the charts. Big like wings. He rubbed his eyes. Probably just a squall line. Aurora had been bright that week. Green flames. Blue edges like knives. The sky hummed at night with static that stuck to your tongue. When the wind howled across the flats, it made the buildings creak like ships. We heard a low sound sometimes when we were out. Not wind. Not the trucks. Not the sleds. A low, long note like a distant drum or a heavy door far away closing slow. We said thunder even when the sky was clear. We said the ice was shifting. We said anything that would make it small. Meyer stopped joking. He had never been loud, but now he was quieter. When we crossed open country, he hung back a little, scanned the sky more than the ground. When Lynch tossed him a line like, "Hey Alaska boy, tell your pet moose to shovel my sidewalk," he just shrugged. He looked tired. I asked him in the chow hall if he was sick. He shook his head. Just listening. For what? He didn't say. He stared at the window where the sky had that flat winter light, pale as a bruise. Folks around here don't camp near herds, he said. Not if you can help it. Wolves, I said. He shook his head once. Wolves make noise. That night we stood outside the barracks for a smoke and the wind made the flagpole sing, a hollow metal hum. Under it for a second I heard something else, a rumble, low as a truck idling in a garage, only it wasn't steady. It pulsed, like breath. The hair on my arms went up. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself lots of things. In the op shack, the young radar kids joked like always, but they took more notes. Kept glancing at the door when it opened, as if something might blow in. Someone taped a stupid drawing on the board. A fat eagle with a beer. Fairbanks Air Defense, it said. We got birds. Under it, someone else wrote, big birds. Different ink, different hand. I noticed it. Then I looked away. We got a heads-up Todd from a captain with a fresh haircut. Locals have stories, he said. You will hear them. We got our own stories. You see something in the scope you can't tag. You follow procedure. You do not improvise. You do not become Lewis and Clark out there. You stick to patrol routes. You log. You report. You keep your helmets on. Watch your fuel. Watch each other. His mouth said order. His eyes said worry. At night, the barracks felt too still. The radiator clanked like a boot on the ladder. The building sighed. Someone on our floor started leaving the TV on low all night, so there was always a voice somewhere. It felt better than silence. Silence meant listening. Listening meant hearing that long, low note that didn't belong to wind or ice. I told myself it was in my head. After a week of that, when the radio called us out for a slow-moving contact, I was almost glad. Maybe I'd get to prove something, even if it was just that the scope was drunk. We tightened our helmet straps. We rode out into the white. The sky felt big in a way that made me crouch without bending my knees. I kept glancing up, just to check, just so I'd know the emptiness was still empty. Ruiz popped his head up at a stop and grinned through his face wrap. "Nothing ever happens here," he yelled over the engine. "We're good." He put his head down and gunned it. Meyer caught my eye. He didn't grin. He didn't shake his head. He just looked at me for a second, like he wanted to say something and didn't. Then we rode on. The call came at dusk, sky like old steel. We were told there was a slow mover on a low track, east of the big valley the caribou liked in winter. Check and report. Easy. We rode until our fingers ached and stopped where the ground dipped. The herd had been there. You could smell them, a sour musk like wet wool. The snow was churned to hell, tracks everywhere. Little pits where hooves punched through crust. Then the big tracks. They were spaced wrong for a moose. Too far, too regular, too deep, almost like something heavy set down and lifted. Not paws, not hooves. The shape wasn't clear at first. Just depressions big as the lid of a trash can, only not round. Long. Almost like I didn't say it. No one did. We found a patch of snow painted rusty. Blood sprayed like someone swung a bucket, but no body. No hide. A few hair clumps, long and brown. Caribou hair, some snap twigs. A drag mark that went nowhere, like a broom had swept the scene into the sky. Epps shrugged. "Wolves got lucky," he said. "Took a leg and pulled it off. The rest of the herd would have run." "Where's the carcass?" Lynch said. "Maybe it made off." "Animals do that." Epps had that calm farm logic. I wanted to believe him. So did the part of me that liked sleeping. The wind changed and made a hollow moan across the flats. It sounded like a voice far away saying, "Wait." We all looked up the same second. And we didn't see anything. Not then, just cloud and the last of the light. "I saw something," Rui said, voice muffled by his rap. "Shadow. Big. Went over." He squinted. "Could have been a cloud. Could be full of crap." We logged the scene, called it in. The ops kid on the radio sounded bored. "Copy animal predation," he said. "No visual." His voice cracked on visual. He sounded too young to shave. We packed up. We rode back with that low tone in the air again, like the horizon had a motor. I tried to joke when we got in. "You think Santa upgraded his sleigh?" It died quick. Nobody wanted to laugh. The chow hall was loud and warm and smelled like onions. Food felt like ritual. If you chewed, the world stayed normal. Command filed it as animal predation. That should have been the end. It wasn't. 2 nights later, we were back out. Because that slow mover kept showing. Because the radar guy started marking times in the log like they were building a case. Because the cold doesn't care how tired you are. The snow squeaked under the sleds. The stars were sharp as nails. We reached a ridge and killed the engines. The silence was deep. My breath fogged and hung. The herd moved a half-mile out, dark flecks on a white plate. The air had that charged feeling, like before lightning. No clouds, no wind. We listened. The radio breathed and went quiet. Then the first heavy beat of air from above. You could feel it in your ribs before you heard it. Like the sky exhaled and it pushed your jacket against you. I want to say we saw it then. We didn't. Not until the next night. That first time we only felt the air shift, like a big truck had gone by on a highway and you'd stood close enough to catch the wake. The herd turned as one and ran, their bodies cutting lines in the snow. We saw another spray of red in the distance. We sat there with our mouths open like idiots and looked at each other, because what else do you do when the sky moves and you can't see why? Command logged our report. Animal activity, the Butterbar wrote. No visual. Possible eagle. We stared at that word, eagle. And none of us said the word we were thinking. ThunderBird. Not out loud. Not yet. The night we saw it, we were in a wide valley with walls like frozen waves. The sky hung low. The moon was a dull smear. The radio crackled with coordinates, and we rattled down the slope like teeth in a glass. We cut the engines near the bottom. The herd was there again. You could feel the ground hum under their hooves. We stood in a loose line and watched our breath drift. I remember the exact sound my zipper made when I pulled my collar up. Tiny, almost lost. I remember the smell of the fuel and the faint stink of caribou. I remember the sound first. A deep whump, then another. Bird wing beats are usually whispers, even the big ones. This wasn't whisper. This was two sheets of iron slamming in slow rhythm. The snow under our boots trembled with each beat, so fine you'd miss it if you weren't already holding your breath. It came out of the dark line above the ridge like a hole cut in the sky. For a second, my brain made it a cloud. Then it cut across the moon smear, and my brain had to choose again. It chose wrong twice. Then it gave up. Bigger than a bush plane's shadow. Wings long enough to touch both sides of a house. Feathers that weren't pretty. Rough like old rope and burnt pine. The body was heavy, not the sleek of a hawk, but the mass of something that carries weight often and doesn't care what it is. The head was hooked and blunt. The eyes were not the eyes of a bird. They were the eyes of a thing that thinks. It circled once, slow. The old cartoons of eagles show grace. This was not grace. This was gravity getting out of the way. The wind of it hit us like a slap. We did what training does to you. We raised rifles. We didn't even think the words. Safety, whoop, aim. The motion skittered out from our hindbrain, automatic, a ritual against panic. The NCO for the patrol that night was Sergeant Hansen, the kind you don't remember until you need him. He put his hand up without taking his eyes off it. Don't, he said. Don't shoot. Why the hell not, Lynch whispered, and I heard the crack in his voice. Because that thing isn't scared of us, Hansen said, and I believed him. It wasn't just the size, it was the way it moved. Like it had no predator left in the world. Like it had never learned the language of fear. It tilted and dove, not at us, at the herd. The sound of the wing beat went from slow to a fast pitch that made my teeth ache. It hit the snow like a black storm. The caribou scattered. It lifted a full-grown one like a kid grabbing a grocery bag. Snow exploded around them. There was blood on white like ink on paper. The bull kicked twice. The thing's talons sank in. I saw the marks. 4. Then a 5th behind. Each one big as my palm. Its grip was lazy, like it could have crushed more if it had wanted to. It banked low enough that its shadow swallowed us whole for a breath. The cold got colder under it, if that makes sense. The engines on the sleds rattled like they wanted to leave. The wake of it hit and set them humming. It climbed with lazy power and circled, and for a heartbeat it hung almost still, head tilted. I thought, stupidly, of a helo flaring before landing. It hovered. That's not what birds do. Not like that. But there it was, hanging on its own making of wind, looking down. Not at the herd, at us. Meyer made a sound through his rap. Something between a prayer and a swear. He took one step back, and the snow squeaked loud enough to be the only sound on earth. The eyes found him. I swear they did. People will roll their eyes when I say that. I don't care. It looked at him like a man looks at a map. Ruiz whispered, "Jesus, mother," and cut himself off because the shape turned and the air pressed on us again. My fingers were on my rifle. I had the sights on empty sky. If I'd fired, it would have been like spitting at a train. It rose. The herd ran, stamped a wide circle, and then struck off in a line. The thing climbed into cloud and was gone. No screech, no cry. Just the memory of the beat in my ribs and the smell of blood. We stood there until our toes went numb. Then we stumbled to the sleds and yanked the cords like we were starting our hearts. No radio chatter. Not until we hit the ridge and could pretend we were just soldiers again and not men who had seen the sky make a choice. Back at the shack, the butterbard tried to put words to it. Large raptor, he wrote, and then scratched it out. Possible eagle. He looked at us like we were a problem set. Distance can trick the eye, he said. Hansen stared at him until the kid looked away. I went to the barracks and sat on my bed and stared at my hands. They shook. Not fast. A little tremor, like a wire in wind. I held them together. It didn't help. They split us up. That's how you know when a thing matters. Not just the paperwork. The procedure smell. One at a time, the sergeant at the door barked, and we went in, sat under a buzzing light, and answered questions like we were telling on ourselves. The captain at the table had a folder with our names. He had cold eyes. The butterbar sat in the corner with a legal pad trying to look older than he was. Another guy I didn't know wore a suit that didn't fit the room. He washed without blinking much. I decided I didn't like him right away. Describe what you saw, the captain said. A bird, I said. Plain. No poetry. Big. How big? I held my hands apart like an idiot. Wings. Wider than a bush plane, maybe. Felt bigger than that. Felt. He wrote it down. You are aware eagles can appear larger than... It lifted a caribou, I said. Not a calf. I looked him in the face. A bull. Full grown. He tapped his pen. Distance can. I know distance, I said, and there was more heat in my voice than I meant. I know snow. I know shadows. It was what it was. I thought he would bark. He didn't. He sighed like a man who had heard this before and didn't want to again. The suit leaned forward. Any sound. Wing beats, I said. Big. You could feel them in your chest. Any cry. Call. He said it like he was reading a list. No, I said. Just the wind it made. Any markings. Dark, I said. Feathers rough. Not pretty. Eyes? He asked, and his voice went softer. That rattled me. Yeah, I said. Eyes. I tried to shape the memory with my mouth. Not bird eyes. Not the way I've seen. Looked. I searched for the word. Old. The butter bar scribbled. The captain nodded. Thank you, specialist. That'll be all. It wasn't all. They talked to each of us. Epps came out red-faced and quiet. Lynch came out with his jaw hard. Ruiz came out and put his back to the wall like it had become a friend. Meyer went in and stayed longer than the rest. When he came out, he didn't look at us. He went straight down the hallway and out the door. I heard the slam. Later, they pulled us all in together and gave us the line. Eagle, the captain said. Distance tricked the eye. He said it like a man setting a tire into a rut he used every day. Sir, Hansen said, and there was a blade in the word, no. The suit smiled without his eyes. A cargo drop mistaken for wildlife is more common than you think. A cargo drop grabbed a caribou, Lynch said. Yeah. Okay. Unidentified aerial activity. The butter bar read off the fresh version of the report. No visual confirmation. I laughed then. A bark that surprised me. No visual. We all just watched a movie in our heads. The captain's eyes went flat. Listen up, he said. I don't care what you think you saw. I care what is written. And what is written is that you saw nothing that can be verified. You tracked animal predation and reacted within guidelines. Good job. You will not share speculative tales with the locals, with your spouses, with your drinking buddies, or with the mirror when you shave. We clear. Silence. Are we clear? He said again. Yes, sir, we said. Not because we agreed. Because the army has a shape and we fit it or it breaks us. He leaned in. And if this story leaves this room, he said, it is career suicide. Do not make me repeat myself. The suit looked pleased at that phrase. It was the right kind of fear. The official kind. We signed. We signed again. We walked out with our boots heavier by a pound each. The hall smelled like burnt coffee and paper. It smelled like small lies, the ones that greased the machine. In the barracks, I sat with Ruiz and let the TV speak for us. A sitcom laugh track kept insisting life was simple. He muted it and said without looking at me, we saw it. We saw it. Yeah, I said, they're going to pretend we didn't. Yeah, he nodded. Okay, that should have been the end. It never is. After the talk, the air in the unit changed. Not all at once. It was like a thermostat turned down a degree each day until the room felt wrong, and you didn't know why. Guys who used to linger in the hall now went straight to their rooms. The volume in the chow hall dipped like somebody put a hand over the speakers. We whispered more. Not on purpose. It's just how secrets are born. It wasn't after the caribou, Epp said once in the motor pool, voice low. It circled us. It looked. It was testing us. He laughed after, like he wanted to shove the words away. The laugh sounded like a cough. I woke one night to the sound of nothing. It was loud. The radiator didn't bounce. The building didn't creak. I lay there and waited, and then I heard the low note again, the one that was not the wind. It rolled through the space between the walls. I got up and looked out the window. Snow falling soft. The world looked harmless. The hum kept going. I put my palm on the glass and felt it tremble there. It might have been my hand. In the maintenance bay, a civilian contractor from up north fixed a heater that wouldn't. He had tattoo lines on his hands that looked like old fish bones. He wore his hat inside. He looked at our patches and nodded and didn't ask questions. When he was done, he made like he was leaving, then came back and said to Meyer in a voice like dry wood, "You saw something." Not a question. Meyer didn't answer. The man's eyes were not friendly or unfriendly. They were tired. "ThunderBird," he said. Ruiz snorted. "Like the car," he said. He wanted it to be a joke so hard you could see him straining. The man didn't smile. "Before cars," he said. "He takes caribou. Sometimes men. If he looked at you, you are lucky." "Lucky," I said. It came out sharp. Lucky he did not choose. The man turned. "Don't camp where the herds are thick," he said over his shoulder, and left like a ghost slipping into daylight. We stood there with our mouths dumb. The word hung in the air. ThunderBird. I wanted to bat it away. It didn't leave. It sat on my shoulder and breathed. Transfers rumors started. They always do. Names floated in the hall like driftwood. "They're breaking us up," Lynch said in the smoke area. He tried to make it sound like a conspiracy and a relief. Both at once. He wasn't wrong. They shuffled assignments. They sent Epps to a different detail. They put Ruiz on nights with a different crew. They sent Meyer on leave he hadn't asked for to visit a stepdad in a village I couldn't spell. Hansen got a desk for a week. Then he got sent on a trip to a school in Anchorage. The butter bar got a long weekend. The captain got a new suit friend. We all got the message. Spread us thin. Break the story into pieces so it fades. It works, mostly. It didn't work in our heads. I started checking the sky every time I walked between buildings. It felt stupid and necessary. My neck ached. I slept badly. When I did sleep, I dreamed in white and breath and the pressure of wind heavy enough to make my spine bow. One night, moving between shacks with a box of parts, I stopped because I heard a whisk of something above. I looked up so fast I almost fell. It was only a raven, big and smug. It laughed that raven laugh that sounds like a man who's been drinking alone too long. I swore at it. It swore back. I stopped going to the chow hall alone. I sat where my back was to a wall. That's a cliche. It also works. My hands stopped shaking. They didn't stop hurting. The cold got inside and lived there. I started wearing a wool cap to sleep. My head felt too naked without. The radio kept calling slow movers. Not often. Just enough. Ops would say, probably weather. We'd say, copy. We'd look at each other and not say the other word out loud, the big one. I saw Meyer in the PX and asked him how leave was. He looked at me like I'd asked him how his funeral went. "Quiet," he said. "You okay?" He nodded once. "Heard a story," he said. "A long one." He gave me a half smile that had no humor in it. "The old folks say it's not all one thing. They say ThunderBird is more like a title than a name. Like saying bear when there's more than one kind. But when it comes, everything listens." "What else do they say?" I asked. He shook his head. "They say don't go looking." We went anyway. Because the radio told us to. Because duty is a chain you wrap around your own neck and call jewelry. They sent us out one more time together before the split finished. Like the last song at a bad dance. The valley was a different one. The kind with a stream that cut through and froze in a soft ripple. Frost on low brush looked like sugar. The sky was a bruised color. I remember thinking that if I was a poet, this would be the place I wrote about. Then I remembered I was a soldier and not a poet and quit that thought like a bad habit. We wrote in 2 files. The radio hissed and said words that didn't matter, just numbers and headings. We were there to look, that was all. The air was too still. Still air in Alaska feels like someone held their breath and forgot to start again. We cut engines and took a knee like it was a drill. The silence hit like a blanket over the head. You could hear your own blood. We didn't talk. Even Ruiz didn't. We watched the herd far edge of the valley. They were smaller than the night before. Or maybe they were just further. It didn't matter. At first we didn't see it. That's how big sky works. A thing can be right there and the eye slides past it like a fish through reeds. Then Lynch squeezed my arm hard enough to bruise. He didn't point. He didn't need to. High, against the smear of cloud, a dark line moving with purpose. Not flapping now, gliding. Long and slow and straight. When it turned, the sun, if you could call the smear that showed the wing shape, the arc was wrong for any bird I'd learned. Longer. The tips flexed like fingers. It didn't wobble like a plane might in that thin wind. It held the air like a man holds a steering wheel, firm, casual. It didn't dive. It didn't cry. It didn't even look like it was hunting. It tracked us. I felt it the way you feel, a stare at the back of the neck. It didn't need to get close. It already knew what we were. It had decided we were not food. Not yet. Just noise on its land. "Don't shoot," Hansen said, again out of habit. No one had moved. No one would. The rifles were heavy and useless at our sides. I felt small in a way that didn't feel like shame. It felt like the truth. We were ants on white. "Maybe it'll just go," Epps whispered. It did not. It drew a circle wide, then another. It rode the thin currents like it made them. It came lower only once, enough that I could see the head shift, a little tilt, the way a person tips their head when they're trying to understand the sound coming from a radio in another room. If you think I'm putting human thought on a bird, you're right. But the thing put thought on me first. It made me think about what I was to it. Not a soldier, not a man. A shape with heat inside. A noisemaker. A witness. The fear that came then wasn't panic. It was a slow cold that started in the spine and spread. A thought formed like frost on glass. It's not hunting us now. The now did a lot of work in that sentence. "Why is it here?" Lynch said, almost to himself. "To look," Meyer said. His voice was steady and sad. "To remind who?" Ruiz asked. "Us," Meyer said, "that we're not in charge." The thing leveled its wings and climbed. It rose into the cloud, and the cloud closed like a mouth. The wind that had been nothing started up and ran across the snow with little claws. I let out a breath I hadn't known I was holding and tasted my own fear in it. It tasted like pennies. We didn't run. Not right away. We got on the sleds and rode out slow because men don't like to show their back to something. The engines coughed. The snow hissed under the runners. The radio chattered nonsense. I turned once and looked back. The sky was empty again. The herd moved like a river. The valley belonged to itself. When we crested the ridge, Ruiz laughed a small, high laugh that made me worry about him. "It knows where we sleep," he said. "It's going to come scratch at the window." "Shut up," Lynch said. It had no bite. Back on post, we did the dance again. The paperwork, the calm faces, the phrases that sit like rocks in the mouth. No visual confirmation, possible interference, unidentified. The suit didn't come this time. Maybe he didn't need to. The machine knew the tune. In the barracks, under the stink of wet wool, we talked like old men in a storm. Soft. Pauses, no jokes, no jokes. "Maybe it will take one of us," Ruiz said. He stared at the ceiling. "Maybe that's the deal. One for the herd. One for the sky." "Nah," Epps said. "We're not good meat. Too much gear." He smiled, then the smile was wrong. Bad taste. "Maybe it already took one," Lynch said. He meant someone else, not from us. From before. The simple fear you can hug is better than the big one. The one that says you live under a sky that holds things that don't care about your rules. I tried to pray. The words didn't come. I said my own. Not elegant, not even clean. Just a walk through my head of the faces I loved and the places I wanted to see again. I promised changes I wouldn't keep. I promised to be brave. I promised to keep my head down. I promised everything. I slept with my boots by the bed. They broke us up within weeks. Sometimes the army is slow. Sometimes it moves like a knife. This time it sliced us neat. Orders printed with our names like a shuffle of cards. Epps to a training unit. Lynch to maintenance on the other side of post, like that was really another world. Ruiz to nights at a different site where the wind spoke another accent and the coffee tasted like a different motor. Hansen got sent to Anchorage for more than a school. He did not come back to our platoon. The butter bar rotated out as butter bars do. The captain kept his folders shut tight and looked through us. Meyer asked for another leave. It was approved fast. Too fast. We didn't say goodbye like in movies. We said the small things. Watch your hands. Don't forget your hat. Text me if you get the chance. Then one by one we stopped seeing each other in the chow line, in the smoke shack, in the hall. The unit felt like a house where furniture had been moved an inch each day until you walked into tables you knew were there. I kept scanning the sky. Habit now. A tick. No sightings. No heavy wing beats running through my ribs. No pressure that pushed my jacket flat. Just ravens. Just cloud. Just the low voice of wind and the creak of buildings that outlived all their paint. Sometimes I heard the long low note again, far off. It could have been a truck on a road I couldn't see. It could have been nothing. It shaped the air the same way a memory does. You can't point to it. You can only feel its weight. I started reading, quietly. On my phone when it had bars. At the library when I could stand the light. Fossils, big birds. The old names. Argentavis, they called one. Wings like a small plane. Bigger than the biggest eagle. Lived long ago where the world had a different rhythm. Hast's eagle. Small compared to the other, but it took men out of stories. It took Moa, big as a horse without a brain to match. The bones say what the bones say. Once, the sky held monsters. Once, things hunted in open daylight, and shadow was a weapon. Alaska has room for secrets. The size of it will break your brain if you try to hold it all at once. There are places where no one goes for years. Canyons that catch snow like bowls and keep what they take. Lakes under ice that don't see sun for more winters than a man gets. There's room for a thing to live and die and leave only a story behind, and a shadow that does not match a chart. I don't know if what we saw was the same thing the old stories mean when they say ThunderBird. I don't know if it was alone. I don't know if Command knew more. I know they knew enough to keep us from talking. I know they knew enough to take us apart before we could agree on our memory. That felt deliberate. That felt like containment, not disbelief. Once, a year later, at a different base, I saw a dark shape high and far. My stomach fell like a man in a dropping elevator. It was a hawk. That was all. It rode a lazy circle and flicked its tail and went about its small hawk business. I laughed and had to sit down and put my head between my knees. My buddy asked if I was okay. I told him I ate bad sausage. He nodded. He believed me. Good for him. I think about that last night in the valley, the way it circled without hunger, the way it looked down and weighed us, the way you weigh a sack to see if you can carry it. I think about the moment it hovered, and the pressure of its making of wind pinned me to the earth. I think about how choices get made in the wild. Simple, clean, this or that, live or not. The world shrinks to a claw and a throat. We were not prey that night. That is not the comfort you think it is. Sometimes I wake up before dawn and the room is black and I feel the beat of wings against my ribs like a memory tapping to be let in. I lie very still and wait for it to pass. It always does. It leaves a taste of iron and winter and the burn of fuel in my nose. You want a moral? People like those, they're easy to carry. I don't have one. I have a story told a decade down the line with coffee in hand and a fire close enough to feel but not close enough to lie. If you ask me if it was real, I'll ask you if your bones believe your skin. Sometimes the flesh lies, the bones don't. If you find yourself up north, near Fairbanks, near the parts of the map that look empty, do two things. Keep your fire by the trees. Don't camp where the caribou crowd the plain and breathe their steam in a big low cloud. The old man at the gas station knew that much. His parka knew the rest. And if the radio squawks and tells you a slow mover dances low and the wind says nothing and the sky looks too big for the world, and you feel your jacket push against your chest with a breath you did not make, do not shoot. It won't help. Raise your eyes. Say the small names of the people you love. Make yourself a witness and not a meal. Later, when some captain tells you you saw weather and some suit smiles without his eyes, think about fossils big as a truck tire and talons the size of your hand. Think about the space Alaska holds for secrets and the way the army moves, men like chess pieces. Think about the caribou herd running wild in a circle like a river that lost its banks. Think about men standing on snow with rifles that suddenly feel like twigs. Remember the moment it circled and hovered like a hilo that learned feathers first. Remember the look. Remember that if it looked at you and you are here now, you are lucky. Lucky it didn't take you. Lucky it didn't decide. Lucky it only reminded you that the world is older than your rank and bigger than your briefings, and that some things own the sky because the sky remembers them and makes room. That's what I remember anyway. A beat in my chest that wasn't my heart. A shadow that swallowed us and spit us back out. The taste of pennies on my tongue. The low note rolling across a valley with no trees and no mercy, and the knowing, cold as Fairbanks in January, that thunderbirds take caribou. Sometimes they take men. That night it chose not to. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.